They told us, when we were very small, that the cold could listen. That was the first lie that stuck to me like ice. I remember the sound of my mother's boots on the porch, slow, deliberate, before she would call us outside. The hook is simple and ugly. We weren't allowed to build ordinary snowmen. We were taught a different vocabulary for winter. Make them heavy, my grandmother would say, as if weight were a virtue. Pack them tight, my father would add, as if the snow were a secret to be sealed. I say this now as a young man with hands that still ache from the cold, but back then it was ritual and warmth and the soft knit of a scarf around my neck. It smelled like coal and wet wool, and something faintly sweet like apples gone bad in the barn. Those smells press into me when I close my eyes. The town was small, the roads narrow and lined with trees that threw black lace across the snow. At first, the oddities were tiny things. A neighbor's cat that never showed its face again after a long snowfall. A pair of gloves left on a fence post where no one claimed them. The way children's laughter would trail off as if swallowed by the air. We chalked those moments up to winter. Misplaced items, sleeping pets, the kind of forgetfulness people get when days are all the same. I learned to notice the silences more than the noises, the pause between a footstep and the crunch that followed, the way breath hung in front of a mouth like a fragile lamp. There was always someone watching. Sometimes it was my uncle, hunched at the window, his silhouette blurred by frost. Sometimes it was nothing at all, just the space where a person should be. The first real unease came with an absence that names itself only in the dark. My cousin Tomas didn't go away, not in the way you think. He came to dinner, sat elbow to elbow with us, his cheeks bright from the cold. He laughed. He answered when someone asked him what he wanted for Christmas. Then, the next morning, his bed was neatly made, the toys on the floor as if nothing had moved. We all stood at the foot of his bed and felt the same strange sinking in our chests, like a drawer left open inside us. That day the sky was a low, bruised gray. Sleet hissed against the windows and left the world in a constant, tiny ticking. We told ourselves that Tomas had run to a friend's, that he had wandered, that he would come back with coat crumbs and a story. My mother kissed my forehead and said, "We'll find him," and I wanted to believe her with the kind of pure faith only a child knows. But when night came, and we went out to pack the snow as we had been instructed, firm, heavy, tight, I felt something shift under my boots, a small hollow sound, like something buried and trying to breathe. After Tomas vanished the way things vanish in my town, neatly, without the slap of panic, we stopped pretending winter was just winter. The adults began to move with a different rhythm, a careful choreography I could feel in the way my mother set the table, or in the way my father folded his hands as if hiding something between his fingers. That rhythm led me, once, to the shed behind our house. I found it by following the scent. Not coal this time, but a coppery tang that sat under the snow like a bruise. Inside the shed there were tools I had never seen, heavy straps, a tin with coarse, dark shavings, a length of rope with a knot my uncle had taught me to tie when I was 6. On the workbench lay a scarf I knew. It had been hanging from Mrs. Keene's porch last week. Now it smelled of snow and something else, something low and animal. I tell you this and my mouth goes dry, remembering the sound I heard then. A soft, stubborn scraping, as if some small thing were trying to move through thick cloth. I remember pressing my ear to the door and feeling the cold breathe back at me, carrying a whisper of a voice that might have been a child's and might have been my own name. The truth smoothed into place after that. The way my grandmother would favor certain houses with a smile, the nights when groups of us set out under the lamplight and returned with our hands smelling of dirt and cinnamon. We weren't taking lost pets. We were taking pieces. People who didn't fit, who left behind pockets of absence that our family filled with snow and stitches. Confrontation came as silence. One night I asked my mother, blunt and small, what they did when the snow was heavy enough. She folded my question into a look that was equal parts pity and warning, and she told me, "We keep the town safe." Her words were a blanket thrown over a wound. I saw my father's jaw clench. My grandmother went on polishing a spoon as if polishing could scrape truth away. The house hummed with secrets. I began to notice how neighbors stopped locking doors on the coldest nights, how some families would not look at us in the market. The town had agreed, muted, complicit, and that realization shredded something inside me. Then the dreams started. Faces appearing where the snow glittered, eyes like coins, mouths stained with the taste of iron. Once, I woke with my palms pressed together and the scent of someone else's hair on my fingers. I began to doubt the order of my memories. Had I been a passive witness, or had I wrapped a scarf around a wrist and tied it with shaking hands? The more I tried to remember cleanly, the more I found my recollections smudged by snow, as if the ritual itself had a way of erasing the edges. The question that grew in my chest was slow and hungry. If my family believed it was protection, at what point did protection become the thing it claimed to keep away? The night I tried to break the pattern, the sky was a flat black bowl, and the snow sounded like someone turning a page. I thought escape would be a single motion: open door, run past the fence, lose myself in trees until my lungs remembered something other than the taste of iron. Instead, everything tightened like a trap. My father stood in the yard, with his shoulders squared, a shadow carved out of patience. My grandmother moved, as if she'd rehearsed for this exact silence. The way she tilted the lamp to show my face, the way her hands did not tremble. They did not beg. There was no pleading in their eyes, because pleading would be useless. Ritual is a kind of stubborn gravity. I remember the scrape of rope on my skin, the smell of winter mixed with wax and old bandages, how sound becomes something far away when someone else's mouth is pressed to your ear. I thought of Thomas, of the neat bed and empty toys, and I understood the economy of absence, how a town balances itself by removing an edge of its humanity and stuffing the hollow with snow. I thought of the faces that had looked away at market, the neighbor who never locked his door. All of them were currency. I did not scream. Screams are for people who expect to be heard. They built me like they built the others, firm, heavy, packed so tight that breath becomes a rumor. Hands I had known since childhood tucked at my sides as if arranging branches. My scarf, the familiar loop of wool, was pulled over something I could not name. In that moment, amid the creaking as snow settled and the hush of neighbors outside, the world simplified to temperature and a slow, spreading numbness. I felt the town pressed down with all the weight it had saved over generations. It was protection, they said once more, and their mouths shaped the word into a benediction. When the first morning light cut the yard in two, I learned how people move past what is buried without noticing. Footsteps that avoid a shoulder, a dog that sniffs and then wanders off, a child who points and laughs because the face in the snow looks like every story told at bedtime. Later, sometimes, alone in a room that still smelled faintly of coal and apple rot, I would find myself miming the motions I had resisted, packing, pressing, pulling the scarf taut. Habit is a kind of language. Memory is softer than snow. The last thing that stays with me is not the sound of their hands or the cold of the rope, but a small private lesson whispered by my grandmother as she smoothed my hair before it was too late. We are heavy, so the town does not tip. I am what we bury.
Subscribe to Horror Story Bar.